What's up guys, Magnolia Mo here and welcome back to my channel. Let's talk about Odyssey directional bass. What is directional bass? I've already done a video on that explaining how directional bass works, but essentially just to demonstrate, with directional bass, the bass from the speakers is directed to the nearest subwoofer, right? So essentially, in this case, right, you have my top rear right, and then my rear height right, and my back surround right, as well as my surround right. So any bass that's in these speakers, right, depending on my configuration, if I'm using the front and rear heights with the top middles, it would be this one right here. But if I'm just using the 4 in-ceiling speakers, it would be this speaker right here. That is my top rear right speaker. So depending on the setup, it'll be bass from these 2 speakers plus the back surrounds and the surround right, redirected to the nearest sub, which is the SB3000 right here. And then similarly, the bass from my rear height left, top rear left, and my surround left will be redirected to Dynamo Foundation 10. And then from the front stage of the room, the bass from the top middle, right there, and the bass from the front height left, and the bass from my front left will be redirected to the SB16 Ultra right there. And finally, any bass that's in the top middle right, top or front height right, sorry, and then my right speaker right here, front right speaker, will be redirected to the Martin Logan Dynamo Foundation 12. Now, and then anything that's in the center speaker is gonna be split between the Foundation, Dynamo Foundation 12 and the SB16 Ultra right there, theoretically, right? So the big test is, does it work? And that's what we're gonna find out right now. One more thing to note is the LFE, right? When the LFE is going, is going to go through all of the subwoofers, right? That's independent. So the purpose of directional bass is to take the bass that's in, your speakers, your surrounds or your fronts, right? And then move it to the sub that's the closest to give you sort of a full range sound, right? So that's the main difference here. So the first scene that we're going to take a look at is Master and Commander. It's a Blu-ray disc that I have. It's in 5.1 DTS, and I believe it's at the 8-minute and 30-second mark. The bass is definitely directional in this particular scene because as the cannons kind of land on the ship over here, the reverberation goes, from front to back or side to side. And if you didn't have directional bass set up, it would just be kind of an omnipresent bass. But in this case, you can actually hear it move from side to side. I was in the front. Now it's kind of everywhere. But it started in the front and moved back. This is the best one. This was more on the left side here, like front and rear left. Now it came to the right and rear. The second scene is the Hobbit, Desolation of Smaug. It's the Smaug flyover. Happens towards the end of the movie. Starts around 2 hours, 29 minutes. And then at 2 hours, 30 minutes and 22 seconds, Smaug kind of shows up. See, as you can see him coming up on the screen. So there's bass right there. And the bass is in the front with the Martin Logan Dynamo Foundation 12 and the SB16 Ultra. And as smog flies over from the left of the screen to the right, but over your right shoulder to the back, you know, where SB3000 is, you're gonna hear the bass kind of travel from the left side to over your shoulder to the right side of the room, essentially. And it's very powerful. The other really good directional bass test is in X-Men First Class. It happens, depending on the version of the movie that you're watching, it happens towards the end of the movie, obviously, but in the one that I have, it starts at 1 hour, 54-minute mark, and it's really when Magneto, you know, takes control of the missiles, right? And during this scene, you're gonna get really deep bass, right, down to 25 hertz, maybe even 20 hertz, depends on the capability of your subwoofer, but it's the sweeps that happen as he's taking control of the missiles over the beach. You're gonna hear the sweep actually happen from the front, center, to the right, and then to the rear. And then again, it happens when he turns the missiles around. Each missile, when it's igniting, should have its own distinct, you know, low end. So it's a very good scene, but you can clearly hear the bass sweep as it's happening throughout, you know, your subwoofer. So that's why I think it's critical to have like 4 subwoofers at the minimum, and they need to be the same subwoofers. You know, they can't be different brands like I have in my case, but still I can hear the bass sweeps clearly in this particular setup, even with the Martin Logan Dynamo Foundation 12 and the Dynamo 10 that I'm using back there. Even with these 2 subs combined with the SVSs, I can clearly hear the differences. All right, and then my favorite movie of all time, Edge of Tomorrow, that you see back there. This is at the 28-minute mark. This is the drop pods. I think this is the second sequence after he has already, you know, gone through one. This is the second time. What makes this special are the drop pods as they hit the beach. LFE pans from overhead to front and then to the sides. And then there's lots of distinct, you know, mid-bass sounds that kind of go around you in the room, and it makes for a good, entertaining, bassful sequence. So as the explosion happens, watch the bass come behind you.
Stand by to deploy. Activate drop lines. 30 seconds. Remember,
Yeah, that was cool. That goes from the front to the center, to the right, and then to the back. Again. It was in the front. And you can hear various swooshes. There we go, another one. So it's not just movies, right? The directionality is apparent in music as well, multi-channel music, most of all, right? So Brothers in Arms from Dire Straits. This is a DVD audio that I have. It's 96 kilohertz, 24-bit, 5.1 surround. So the beginning of the song starts with Sting basically saying, I want my MTV, and there is some underlying bass that's going around you with the music. Starting around 40-second mark, the bass starts to move from speaker to speaker, and it's more apparent then. So at 50 seconds, for instance, the bass is right there at SB16, and then at 58 seconds, the bass travels back to the SB3000 over here. Have you guys tried directional bass on your Denon or Marantz receivers and processors? If you have, leave me some feedback. What are your thoughts about them? And, you know, these 3 movies and that 1 music disc are just examples, right, that I came across as I was watching that actually, you know, sounded good to me from a directional bass standpoint, where I could actually discern the bass sweeps and the movement from subwoofer to subwoofer. And the key here is to have 4 subs. I believe that's the way to go with directional bass. If you have 2 subs, one in the front and one in the back, it'll still work, but the panning of the bass is most effective with 4 subwoofers in your system. Alright guys, so as usual, please don't forget to like this video, share this video, and if you're not subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next one.